Hello and welcome. I am so excited you are here because I am going to talk about some bad things today. I've been wanting to do this video for a while and I was like, I'm just going to do it. So today I am talking about the worst reads of 2023. Some of the books on my list, I would say aren't like super popular but are known, like they're not like Kindle Unlimited random recommendations like by super mega indie authors. Like I'd say a good amount of these are actually pretty well known. So yeah, I'm excited to share why I couldn't stand these books with you. One thing I do want to point out, it's very hard for me to not finish a book. I have to be within the first couple chapters to not finish it. So if I'm like 25% through even, I will keep going because I feel like if I've put in time, I owe it to myself to see how it goes. And yeah, so I would probably say if I was a do not finish type of person, I definitely would have not finished these for sure. But I made it all the way through, so I can tell you just how bad I thought they were. So here we go. Worst books of 2023. All right, y'all. So, of course, I've got my fancy notes. So, these are in no particular order, not in the order that I read them or what I think is absolutely the worst. So, I'm just going to dive in with kind of what I started with. So, the first book, it's actually, some of these are like series. So, the first one actually is a series. It is the Adrian and Isolde duet. This is by Scarlett St. Clair. So she wrote I don't know if I think it's called just Hades and Persephone. It's the like Touch of Darkness series that's actually quite popular. The last book just came out, I believe in December, unless there was publishing, anything pushed. I stopped following it. I'm not going to read it because of how much I disliked these books right here. So I am having a hard time telling you exactly what it's about. Essentially, we have our main character, Isolde de Lara. She like never wants to get married. She just wants to have like fool around and have fun. And she's like she just wants to be a powerful figure on her own. But she's like wed to like this vampire king guy, and he can't wait to marry her. She has to marry him, and then they have sex, and it's great. She's like, I guess this is fine. And then she makes it back to his kingdom, and she finds out that she is more than who she thinks she is. There's definitely some found identities, both in terms of who he is, who she is, and like kind of the pressures and like the evil going on in their world, whether it's in like the more human area or the vampire area. So, of course, then there's obstacles to overcome. It's kind of a plot that's been done, I would say. So I don't want to give spoilers. This is a spoiler-free video. But this book was really, really rough. The first book I thought was better than the second book. Because it had a little bit more plot, right? Because the first book, you have to have an introduction to the world and the characters. And so a lot of time was eaten up with that. And then by the time you got to the second book, like, I really couldn't tell you what the plot was. It was just, that's literally it. Like, there's other forces at play, trying to figure out how to thwart those forces. That's about it. The problem that I had with these books was the main male character and main female character and their relationship. They're supposed to be like I can't remember. I'm not saying there's soulmates in this book or fated mates or whatever it is, heartmates, hajartas, whatever. I don't know, but the two characters who are supposed to be like clearly madly in love or falling in that love, like it just falls flat. This was also a very, very feminist book, and I don't even like saying feminist, it's just anti-man is what it is. And when I pick up books, regardless of what my political views are on anything, I am picking up a book for fun. I don't want anything political in my books, and sometimes it's in there and it's fine, but this was so overtly anti-man. It was distracting, and it's hard to tell me that like these characters are supposed to, like, she's supposed to love him while she's also like considering how useless he is and how much better she is. Like, it was painful. And so on top of the plot not making a lot of sense and the things that were happening in these books, the first book, like I said, had a little bit more plot, but the second book, it was kind of the same things happening. So like disaster would happen, we're going to put out the fire. Disaster would happen, we're going to put out the fire. And it didn't really build much. So between the plot being like not really being furthered and there just being this like huge amount of man hatred, and like we'll get like a smut scene and then it's followed up with like, but he's so weak and I'm so much better and women are stronger. Like it was so distracting and like hard to read. It was painful. It was obviously it's a fantasy romance, so it's unrealistic to begin with, but like the fact that these people are supposed to love each other, it was painful. I literally wrote in my review, I felt like the sole purpose was to provide smut and a heavy amount of man hating. So I'm not going to finish the series because I couldn't even tell you where they're going. I kind of have an idea where they're going, but it's like so blah, and just the message is just not for me. So I know that's actually a popular one. I did look and it actually does have low reviews. Like I think these books are in the low threes, which to me signifies a pretty low book because a lot of people are really quick on like Goodreads to give 4s and 5s. So I actually think, and I was reading the reviews, a lot of people do kind of agree with some of the things that I'm saying. So if you like your fantasy romance books to have beautiful romance stories, this will not be for you because it is just kind of icky feeling. And it's kind of hard to get through because of that. And it doesn't help that the plot is like, I don't even know what happened. So that is Adrian and Isolde series, King of Battle and Blood and Queen of Myth and Monsters. Next book on my list. This one drove me absolutely nuts because I've never read a book that made me question my intelligence. And I was like, I'm like, did I read this at like 3 a.m. and I just totally missed things? Did I fall asleep through a chapter? No, I didn't, because I actually looked it up and a lot of people feel the same way. It is The Stars Are Dying. This book had a lot of promise. This is one of those books where for a while it was like a lot of Instagram reels, a lot of TikTok, like people were chatting about it without even really reading it. Obviously, it was before even the arcs went out. I think she did. She definitely had arcs because there was a lot of negativity from the arc readers actually, and nothing apparently got changed. But it has a really cool premise, and it was just like I said, it made me question my intelligence because like things would happen and I'd be like, wait a second, what? Like, for example, I think there's a scene where she throws a book and the book goes beyond a barrier where she can never get it back, but then in the next paragraph she has the book back, and I'm like blowing my mind. I'm like, wait, did I miss something? But it keeps happening. And you know how when you read books before, if it's not a chapter break, they'll have some sort of like visual, like, okay, there's gonna be a passing of time and we're gonna get a different look. That was missing. Like we'd go from one paragraph, like we're dealing here, and then the next paragraph would be like 2 days later in like a different situation, a different location, and it's like, what the heck is going on? There are a lot of grammar issues and structure issues, I would say. It was really confusing. There's a lot of major issues with the pacing too. Essentially what it is you have this woman, Estrella. She has lost her memories beyond 5 years in the past, and she's just kind of been holed up in this like castle with this dude, and then this guy named Knight comes around. She's not really happy with where she is, and so she kind of is able to she tries to escape, isn't able to escape, tries to escape, isn't able to escape. Knight's kind of here and there as it goes. There's also this like competition going on in the world where the top 5 people are recruited to like fight for the kingdom. And I think how it is, there's some like darkness plaguing the lands. And if I remember correctly, I think whoever wins, their land is free of the darkness. And like the king is like this god who's like evil. And he's got these evil things, and he's like, these evil things have to go somewhere. So if you win the competition, your lands are free. I'm pretty sure that's kind of how it goes. But like the competition is weird. It doesn't really make sense. But our main character kind of gets thrust into that. And then she also has this relationship with this guy named Knight. It's very clear from the beginning that she doesn't know who she is and that she is someone beyond that, as well as Knight. We're not quite sure who he is, and he's something beyond what you see. And that gets unfolded. But then the problem is that the plot, like I said, doesn't make sense. Like there's major, major continuity issues. And in terms of just pacing, it's very strange. It feels very slow, then it'll go super, super fast and slow again. And the banter between the love interests, it just falls so flat. Like it makes it like, I don't feel like it's believable at all. And then it ends on this really weird note. In terms of like the love story thing, I really don't know where she's going with it. There's no chance I'm picking up the next book because this was just so awful. Because of the it was honestly because I felt like I was going crazy. I was like reading and I was like, am I insane? Like, am I just completely missing? And it wasn't, because a lot of people through the reviews say have that same thing. Like, there's continuity issues, there's grammar issues, things don't quite make sense. The plot, there's major plot holes, and there's also like weird changes in terms of where we are in the timeline and how like it's rough. So this is one of those books that did get a lot of hype, and I haven't read Lightlark. I know Lightlark is another, but I think how I feel about this book is how a lot of people feel about Lightlark. Lightlark is this book that came out. Again, I haven't read it. I don't know if I will. I kind of want to read it just to see what all the fuss is about, but, it got a lot of publicity. People are saying it's like the best thing ever. It got a movie deal before it was even written. Like, what? And, then people are like, no, it's awful. And because the writing structure, people are saying like the continuity issues, characters weren't fully developed, it just felt lost. And I kind of think that that's how this book was too. And it's such a shame, because I thought the premise and where she was going from the beginning had a lot of promise and it was cool, but it just was not executed well. And I don't think her editing team or the author really took into consideration any of the feedback from the ARC readers, because a lot of ARC readers said like, this is a mess, you need to fix it, and then they didn't make any changes and came out with the book as is. It's kind of how I understand the story going through Goodreads and just like reading things. So it's unfortunate because it looks so fun. It looks like the next thing. I think I put oh no, I said that previous series, Adrian and Isolde, is kind of like a From Blood and Ash type of knockoff situation. This one is, I don't even know what to compare it to, but it just seems like something so fun that we would all love, and it's just not it. I would say if you read the back of The Stars Are Dying, and if you're like, this looks really interesting, I recommend putting it down and going to pick up Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha Tooley, because I think when I was reading The Stars Are Dying, very different, but in terms of like some of the feel and like the hidden identities and the like competition type feel and the different people of the world and different male characters and love interest options, I think that actually executes it so well. So again, if you read the back of The Stars Are Dying and are like, this looks like a fun book, put it down and go read Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha Tooley, because I think that is what's going to satisfy your interests. So Stars Are Dying. Next on my list. This is one, I don't understand this one at all. The Shadows Between Us. This book has gotten, like, I feel like a lot of people do really like it, and I just don't get it. It is a villain and villain romance. They're both awful people. It's not like, and that's and I thought that was interesting, right? Going into it, because I do enjoy the flip where the main female character is the villain, and this was interesting because the main male character was also just as much a villain and just as crappy. And I was like, this is gonna be fun. I think at some point when I was reading in comments and things, I think this was kind of like billed and like advertised as like a Slytherin romance for my Harry Potter fans out there. Yeah, it's not. So this book gets a lot of hype because of its very first line is really, really popular. And the very first line of the book is, they've never found the body of the first and only boy who broke my heart, and they never will. Which is a fun first line, right? But the book is not fun. So the back of the book is like, woo the Shadow King, marry him, kill him, and take his kingdom for herself. So this is another situation where, like, I believe it starts off with kind of like a competition. It almost feels like Bridgerton-esque, or like courting and like trying, like the Shadow King needs a bride, and like our main female character is in competition for his heart, but like she's like chosen like right away. It's like that whole competition feel that's like exciting, and that courting feel is just like gone after the first like couple chapters. It's not a spoiler, that's just the way that it's set up. And so the whole rest of the book is them just kind of like talking. We find out that she's not the only one trying to kill the king. There's other people trying to kill the king. She's trying to keep her own secrets hidden, because clearly by the first line she killed her first love. But there's just nothing redeemable about either of these characters. The main female character I thought was so annoying and stuck up. I hated it. Like if I if I think of like there's the misunderstood villain where they're not really a villain, right? They're just misunderstood, or maybe or you have the villains like Nesta Archeron from the Akatar world, where she went through some really hard situations, made some really poor choices, but she just really struggled with depression and some things and ended up kind of overcoming that. And it's more of like a situational villain type of thing, right? Then you also have like the pure, like true villain, which when I think of that, from a female main character point of view, I think of the Book of Azrael, and I think of the lead in the female character in that book, like she is literally like a spawn of Satan type of situation. Like that, those are the categories. This villain, she's just annoying. Like she like has lived in the shadow of her sister, and she wants her time, and she just wants power, but she's not really that great or exciting. Her motivations are literally just like, I want to be queen. And it's just like, okay. Like it's super, like it's the main character of like, if you think of like books like The Selection or any competition type thing, the character that you hate, the character who's just in it to get the crown, is like super obnoxious and annoying. That's the main character of this book. And so it was so hard. And it didn't help that the main male character also, when you talk about villains, you have the misunderstood villain, the true rootly evil villain, and then the like villain who was kind of bad, but I actually think Tamlin's heading in that way from Akatar, like clearly villain, but we're gonna overcome it. We made some poor choices. This guy, he's just annoyed, like he just wants power, and so it's really hard because neither of the villains are like follow the interesting villain patterns that I tend to like. They're just obnoxious, annoying, selfish characters. There's also a lot of things in this book I felt like that was like pro female sex, but like anti male sex. And I feel like you can't have like just like be pro sex, but it's weird. And it just made this point. But like the main female character used sex as a way to like manipulate and like punish other characters, and it just was not good. It fell really flat. I'm trying to think. So it's just that it was so boring too. Like that's the plot. She wants to be queen. He needs a queen. That's the plot. Within the first couple chapters, she's in the palace. She's kind of like the chosen one, and that's it. I can't even tell you really what else happens in this book. Obviously, I'm not going to give you the spoilers, but like it's it's just awful. It's not redeeming. The characters, their background stories aren't interesting. They're not these true evil villains. They're just two obnoxious people who are whiny. Like, I think that's actually the perfect comparison. Think about the competition-esque books where you have the side character who's in it for the wrong reasons and you just want them to die already because they're super annoying. Those are our two leads in this book. Highly, I do not recommend this. I think it was so awful and boring and just like, ugh. When it ended, I was like, really? That's it? That's it. So, The Shadows Between Us. Okay, next on my list is The King of Tricksters. This is, I can't remember the first book was called. Technically, I think it's sold as like a trilogy, but the third book actually takes place, I think, it's a significant prequel, so it's kind of a standalone. So there's really two books. I can't remember the first one is called, but the second one, The King of Tricksters, I remember being excited about it, and it just fell so flat. So I'm gonna the kind of general overview. I should do King of Tricksters. There we go, right there. So the general overview of this book, the premise. So mating is a matter of politics for Knight, not the heart. So Knight is the main male character's name. To prevent a forced union that will plague the lunar court into war, he must find and bond his true mate. When he lays eyes on Rain, he knows the shy forest, which is the bondmate he's been searching for. Unprepared for the intensity of his attraction, Knight makes an offer that would keep his priorities straight and his court safe. A marriage of convenience. And that's basically, but she's not really interested. She only wants true love, and that's it. So essentially, he's like king or like duke-esque of this kingdom. There are other kingdoms around him that are at war, and he's kind of now at the point where he's like, crap, I gotta make a decision. I gotta choose a side, and they're all wanting him to marry one of their daughters to form a true formal alliance, and he doesn't want to do that. And in this world, the only way to kind of get around that is to find your true mate, because no one's gonna argue that you can't be with your true mate regardless of who they are. So his goal is to find his true mate, so that way he can marry her and not be stuck in a political marriage that forces him to ally with people he may not want to ally with. So then he finds his true mate. She's a witch living in the woods. She's been around, like, she's like thousands of years older than him. She like doesn't have many friends. She's very sheltered. She obviously there's a backstory that we don't know about and we learn about. But he like proposes marriage to her, but they're true mates. They're obviously both very attracted to each other and feel like that lure and that pull to each other. And she's like, no, I want a marriage of love. And he eventually he like kidnaps her. He has to convince her. So that's kind of the general overview. And of course, there's a war going on. So I can't talk too much more about either of the books without going into plot holes, or plot spoilers, excuse me, I should say. But the problem is with the second book is the first book I wasn't a huge fan of. But I was like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. Like, this is fun. It's different. There's a huge age gap, but the reverse situation, I think it's kind of, I thought how they were interacting with each other was unique. The world was a little different. It felt a little almost whimsical in a weird way. There's like a demon cat that the main female character is like best friends with. So it was just different. I thought it was a little refreshing compared to some of the other things that I read. The problem with the second book is that I wrote, it's about a 300-page book that has the plot points of a 500-page book. So things happen and we just have to accept it. They're not well written out. They're not well developed. Like I think the scene with like the big pivotal war is like, it's just like done in a second. Like one little thing, it's like, okay, we're done. It's problem solved. And I don't like that writing. I think that's actually really lazy writing. I would much rather get through a thicker book with really well done plot than just being told, okay, this happened, so now we're all good. Like the first book even ended on a cliffhanger. And the way it was picked up in the second book already gave me huge red flags. So I was like, oh no, like what? Are you serious? That's the answer? That's like so easy and you like spend no time on it and we're just supposed to accept it. So that was kind of my issue with that, is that I wanted to like it, but it just felt really underdeveloped. And there were so many good plot points that happened, but they were just rushed through with no true development in it. And it was just a race to the end. And like either make this a true 3-book trilogy or add another couple hundred pages or remove a crap ton of plot points and do the plot points you leave well. But yeah, it was very, very rushed. And I almost felt like I was reading a bulleted SparkNotes version of the true story. And just the fact that we have to accept that characters felt this way and the next minute felt this way, this was about to happen, and then, okay, this does it, done, problem solved. That quick, without any true development, was really, really hard to get through, and I could not stand it. One of the worst books by far that I've read. So, The King of Tricksters. Next up, I only have 2 more, and they're both series. One's a duet, and the other one is a series that I actually did not finish, and it's very hard for me not to even finish a series. So when I was talking at the beginning of the video how I go through books. I don't not finish them. I'm kind of the same with the series too. It's really hard for me not to finish a series, especially if I'm a couple books in, because I just want to see, because I see a series almost like a movie, really. Like I want to see how it ends. And I have a hard time stopping partway through because I want to see the whole picture. So I'm not finishing the Adrian and Isolde series I talked about earlier. And I am not finishing this series. It is the Never King series. I also have the first book here. I think when I went to read this book, it was like in my recommendations, which is a huge red flag, like to Kindle Unlimited. This book never should have been in my recommendations because I am not a huge, I don't read erotica for the sake of erotica. Like I read fantasy romance, dystopian books, whether they're open door, closed door, super spicy, minimal spice, super descriptive or non-descriptive. That's what I enjoy. It doesn't really matter. I just want it to be done well. This book, I should say, is kind of the way it's written, like in the back. It's like it's like a different type of Peter Pan story where he's actually the villain, and the Wendy and the Darling family has been like kind of kidnapped by him year after year. And on the 18th birthday, the most recent female Darling, so I don't remember the true Peter Pan story, but their last name is Darling. So they kidnap the most once you turn 18 and you're a girl in the Darling family, you can't stop it. Peter Pan's kidnapping you and taking you to Neverland, and you don't really know why. And so we're approaching the girl's 18th, this Wendy's. I don't know if her name is actually Wendy. It might be something else. I think her grandmother's name was Wendy or something like that. But we approach her 18th birthday, and she's like kind of given up on life because she's like, I'm going to be kidnapped anyway. And when the Darlings come back, they're like completely like lost in the head. Like they went through all kinds of psychological stuff. They can't really form proper sentences or really live well anymore. Like something happens with their mind. So it's like a death sentence essentially to be kidnapped by Peter Pan. So I was like, that is really cool. Because if I don't know how much I've talked about this, but I love fairy tale retellings and I love twisting the fairy tale and having new spins on it. So I was like, oh, that seems fun. And I don't mind a dark fantasy book. I like to have variety. I'm very much a mood reader. So sometimes I want a darker book. And so I think when I went into the series, it was recommended on Kindle Unlimited. Never should have been recommended to me on Kindle Unlimited because it's not my cup of tea. And it was dark, and it's fairy tale retelling. And by the time when I saw it, I was like, I think I was done reading like happy-go-lucky things. And it was a short book, which sometimes I like the short book. So everything was set up for me to love this, and I could not stand it. And I will say, I read the first, I think 2, maybe 3. I think each of them are under 200 pages or right around 200 pages, which to me isn't a full book. And I was just like so flabbergasted by it. I was like, I need to get through this and see if it gets better. Like I want this to get better because more characters get introduced, like Captain Hook gets introduced, the crocodile character gets introduced, and it seemed like it was getting interesting, but I just couldn't take it anymore. Because this literally, the whole point of this book is put the characters in weird situations so they can all have weird, crazy, uncomfortable sex type of things, and it was just kind of gross. But it's like, this is like flat out erotica. It's not it's not a fantasy romance book. I wouldn't classify that as all. Like the whole point of the plot was to get characters in weird situations. They would do weird things with their bodies. Problem solved. And the main female character, like she was just not, like she was just like loving it and thought it was the best thing ever. And she was like totally like violated, and it just was not my thing. It's also why choose. Like there's many like threesome type scenes and like all together, like just using her, not my thing at all. I don't like why choose. If you like that, that's great, and I'm so happy for you. You might enjoy this book, but it is written and it's recommended as a dark fantasy romance, and there's no romance in it whatsoever. It's very dark, but it's just like pure erotica, and I was so disappointed. I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be a really fun Captain Hook, Peter Pan twist on the story, and it wasn't. It was, let's get these 18-year-olds in different situations and have them do it in weird ways, and that was just not my thing. The plot that did happen, major plot holes, didn't make sense, like again, because the plot was secondary to the smut. So if you are a smut reader and that's what you love, you would probably love this book. But I was going into it expecting it to be a cool plot and a twist on the Peter Pan. No. So enjoy that if that's your thing. No judgment. That's wonderful for you. Just not my thing. And I wanted to point out because like, I don't think it's so, and I didn't do much reading up on it, right? But I do not think the fact that it would show up on my Kindle Unlimited as a recommendation and show up on Dark Like Fantasy, that's not how it's not properly shelved, I would say. So that is the Never King series. Okay. Last on my list is another surprise why choose book that I wasn't expecting. I was looking for a really good dragon romance book because I just wanted something different from Fae, and I don't know, just something fun, a dragon. That's cool. Let's do it. This is Kingdom of Flames and Flowers, and then the second book, Kingdom of Ash and Bones. So this is I also was interested in this book because it's also like a dystopian book that just happens to have dragons and some minor magical elements in it. But there's no, if I remember correctly, I don't think there's any real magic. It's just like a curse that certain characters turn into dragons, but it felt really dystopian actually, and I love dystopian books, and as I'm talking about it, I remember what got me interested in it is it felt like a good mix of the dystopian and the fantasy kind of combined. But essentially you have this world separated into different districts. Each district does a different thing for the mainland capital area. Every year women get pulled from the districts to go up and be courted by the noble men. There's something clearly going on with the noble women and being able to have children, so they need to pull women from the districts to supply the capital with more little noble babies. And so our main character, main female character, she was like kept back from the last one that happened because she was too sick to go. So now she's like the oldest in her group, and she's like, I know I'm gonna get picked, but you never return to your family. So it's a situation where it's like, do you want to go live in the capital, or do you want to say goodbye to your family forever? So she kind of doesn't want to go. She wants to stay and take care. It's a very poverty ridden area where she is, but she gets taken there, and it is not good. Like, they're like tortured, they're like tormented. Like, it is not this courting thing that you think. And then she does kind of develop a relationship with not one but two characters. One, of course, is the prince, and the whole point is this year the prince is eligible to pick a princess and then future queen. And so that's kind of as much as the plot that I can give you. There's rebellions kind of going on in the background. Things aren't quite as they seem. So that's as much as I can give you. The problem with this is it was why choose, which is fine for you, not for me. I'm not a why choose person, but that's fine. But like, she goes from like hating her like love interest, then the next instant being like completely okay with their behavior. I remember feeling like the first book was so good up until like about 50%. I felt like it really started falling apart. The plot didn't quite make sense, and just her relationships with the different characters kind of felt icky. Like, she's really trying to stand up for her group, for her like district, and like the people she's falling in love with are like, you're a slave, you're nothing more, and she's like, okay, but I'll sleep with you, it's fine. Like, it just felt a little weird. And then we get to the second book, which is a whole mess of things. Like, there's this potential rebellion, you've got things going on in the castle, things going on in the districts. Like, there was like 3 separate plots that the author was trying to accomplish, and she didn't do any of them well. Like, this is a type, like, the plot of that book is like the equivalent of like the first 3 like from Blood and Ash type books, or like ACOTAR books. Like, and these are tiny books, I think they're less than 300 pages. She tried to pack so much in, and none of it made sense. All the new characters were underdeveloped. So you also have the main character who ended the first book like really angry with her love interests to being completely okay with them in the start of the next one. The other thing about this book is there was a lot of grammar and continuity issues. The 2 princes both have Z names. It's like Zephyr and Zane or something like that. She'll be with only one main character, and then she'll be like with Zane, and then all of a sudden the next sentence it's Zephyr, and the author clearly just got the names confused. And that happened not even with the Z names, but with some of the other characters, and I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, it just completely fell apart. The plot was completely nonsensical, underdeveloped. The characters completely underdeveloped. The ending was weird and creepy and gross and just like not at all my thing. And then it's going in a completely different direction from the first 2 books. And like, considering how underdeveloped the plot was throughout the first, like the second half of the first book through the second one, I don't even know. Like, it's just going to be one heck of a mess. But it's just so messy and just not for me. It looked fun. It is not. It is difficult to get through. Major grammar continuity issues. So super confusing. Underdeveloped. And that ending, man, was weird. Not good. That is it. That's my list for today of the worst books. Thank you for hanging in there. I really hope this convinced you not to read any of those if any of them were on your list. If you do read them, please be sure to message me on Instagram at Morgan&Bookland, and we can chat about how much you loved him and how wrong I was, or how much you're like, oh my gosh, Morgan, you're totally right. This is so freaking weird. Because I just also want people to validate, be like, yeah, that was weird. Like, please, someone just validate and say, like, you're right. Yep. Or say, no, you're crazy. Because I would like to know. Like I said, the one book, The Stars Are Dying or something. Is that what it's called? I don't even remember the name. The Stars Are Dying. Like I said, I thought I was going insane. Because I was like, I know I'm an intelligent reader. I don't know why I'm not understanding this. So I would love for someone else to either validate that I am crazy or not a good reader, or yes, there's something going on there. Goodreads definitely made me feel better about myself for sure, reading other reviews. But anyway, have fun with this. If you've read any of these too, chat me already. I would love to chat with you. My next video, I have a couple of different ideas. I might actually do like my biggest disappointments of 2023, which of recent reads, not just 2023, because there are some books where even though I would give them like a 4 or 3.5, I found them disappointing, and I think that's a really different thing than like a bad book, but a good book that still didn't quite hit the mark, or you thought it was going to be one thing, but it was the other. So I think that's going to be my next video. I also have a couple book series that I'm finishing up, and I'm going to do some series review videos. I'm also putting together a what to read after ACOTAR and recommendations in terms of if you liked this series, what you should pick up next. So I'm working on that too. Fun fact, the only one I have a hard time finding another series recommendation for is ACOTAR itself, because there are so many. So I'm trying to find a real good one to recommend that I feel like really does meet kind of why people love ACOTAR. But anyway, yes, that's what's coming up next on my channel. Thank you for hanging in there, and have a wonderful day.